The Rising Sun Group headquarters looms over the city like a monolith of cold, digital ambition, its circuit board facade pulsing with electric life as the rain pours down. Brother Shen strides through the downpour with his subordinate Tiankai, cutting through the gloom as he demands to know exactly how long they have been working together. Tiankai keeps his eyes sharp and his posture rigid, checking his watch with a nervous precision as he confirms it has been 3 long years under Shen. Shen flashes a calculated, predatory grin, dangling the ultimate carrot, a massive promotion within the Rising Sun Group, if only Tiankai can seal this final high-stakes deal. Tiankai offers a polite, practiced smile, masking his true intentions while Shen promises to put in a glowing word with the higher-ups to secure his future. Shen catches Tiankai's restless eyes darting to his wrist again, his tone sharpening as he calls out his subordinate for being in such a suspicious hurry. Tiankai brushes off the accusation with a smooth, dismissive wave, claiming it is nothing while signaling that their ride has finally arrived to whisk them away. The headlights of a vehicle cut through the dark, rainy night, blindingly bright as it pulls up to the curb to collect the two corporate players. They stand frozen in the glare of the approaching car, the sudden arrival shifting the atmosphere from a calm negotiation to something far more intense and urgent. Shen is absolutely floored, his composure shattering in an instant as he realizes something has gone horribly wrong, his eyes widening in pure, unadulterated shock. Tiankai's hand strikes with cold, calculated precision, shoving his mentor toward the abyss as the betrayal he's been nursing for 3 long years finally reaches its violent peak. Shen tumbles into the unforgiving rain, his body plummeting toward the pavement as the realization of his subordinate's treachery burns hotter than the cold wind against his skin. A ghostly silhouette of Tiankai looms in the downpour, his mind replaying the bitter irony that the man he trusted most was the one waiting to pull the rug out. The two figures collide in a blur of motion, Shen's life force fading into the dark, wet night, while Tiankai watches his path to power clear with chilling, silent efficiency. A close-up reveals the true face of the snake, Tiankai's lips curling into a smug, predatory smirk that confirms he has no remorse for the monster he has become. Time marches forward a full year, leaving the corporate carnage behind for the neon-lit digital obsession of God's domain, a game that has hooked millions in its virtual grip. In a cramped, trash-strewn apartment, the protagonist sits trapped in his wheelchair, his only escape from a broken reality being the headset that promises everything but delivers only frustration. He stares at the hardware with pure, unadulterated loathing, his fingers trembling as he realizes that in this world, skill means nothing if your wallet is empty. The pressure finally snaps his fragile patience, and with a roar of pure, unfiltered rage, he hurls his expensive VR gear across the room. The headset smashes against the floor, scattering debris and broken dreams everywhere as he collapses from his chair, left to rot in the wreckage of his own life. Shen Qing stares at the shattered photograph, the memory of his sister's smile serving as a painful reminder of the corporate snake who stole everything from him. His knuckles turn white as he grips the table, his eyes burning with a lethal, unquenchable rage that demands nothing less than total retribution for his sister's suffering. He wheels himself forward, his silhouette cutting through the doorway like a vengeful ghost returning to haunt the halls of the Rising Sun Group. Xiao Tiankai sits behind his massive desk, looking down at his former mentor with a smug, condescending air that makes the air in the room grow heavy. The traitor adjusts his glasses, his predatory gaze scanning Shen Qing with a look of pure, unadulterated amusement as he questions the reason for this pathetic visit. Shen Qing doesn't flinch, his voice cold and steady as he demands to know the location of his sister, his entire focus locked onto the man who ruined his life. Tiankai lets out a mocking laugh, casually admitting that he has locked her away like a common prisoner simply because she dared to defy his twisted authority. The audacity of the claim sends a jolt of pure adrenaline through Shen, his jaw tightening as he warns the corporate parasite that he is playing with fire. Tiankai stands up, his mask of professional courtesy slipping to reveal the venomous, arrogant monster who discarded his superior the moment he became a liability. He leans in close, spitting the ultimate insult with a twisted grin, reminding the man in the chair that he is nothing more than broken, useless trash now. Shen Qing reaches his breaking point, pulling a live grenade from his coat and daring his former subordinate to face the consequences of his betrayal. Xiao Tiankai recoils in genuine disbelief, his smug corporate mask slipping as he stares down the barrel of a desperate man's final, explosive act of defiance. The pin is pulled and the metal casing flies through the air, a tiny, lethal object that marks the end of all negotiations and the start of chaos. A blinding flash of orange fire consumes the room, the shockwave tearing through the office as the grenade detonates with enough force to shatter everything in its path. Shen Qing lies broken amidst the smoldering debris, his body battered and bleeding as he struggles to draw breath in the aftermath of his failed suicide mission. Emerging from the smoke like a demon from the abyss, Xiao Tiankai stands unharmed, his body encased in a terrifying biomechanical suit pulsing with dark, supernatural energy. The traitor lets out a chilling, triumphant laugh, gloating that the impossible powers of the Divine Path game have manifested in the real world to secure his dominance. He looms over the wreckage, mocking his former mentor for his pathetic lack of vision and his inability to grasp the true scale of the power now at play. Tiankai plants his boot firmly onto Shen's head, crushing him into the concrete while revealing the final, agonizing truth that he was the architect of the hit-and-run. Shen Qing lets out a final, blood-curdling scream of pure, unadulterated hatred, his spirit refusing to break even as his body is pushed to the very brink of death. The sterile white ceiling of the hospital room comes into focus, the fluorescent lights buzzing with an eerie, rhythmic hum that signals a return to the land of the living. Shen Qing jolts awake with a violent, desperate gasp, his heart hammering against his ribs as he frantically scans the room, trying to reconcile his memories of death with this sudden waking nightmare. He breathes heavily, his mind racing as he processes the impossible reality that he is still breathing, still conscious, and somehow inexplicably back in the past. A surge of manic hope washes over him, his eyes widening as he realizes the universe has granted him a second chance to rewrite his tragic, blood-soaked history. He tears the sheets away with trembling hands, his gaze dropping to his lower body to confirm the state of his physical form. The sight of his heavily bandaged, immobile legs hits him like a physical blow, the crushing weight of his injury confirming that he is trapped in the aftermath of that fateful accident. He realizes with a sinking heart that he has been sent back to March 18th, exactly 1 month after the crash that destroyed his life and left him a broken shell. Frustration boils over as he slams his fist into the mattress, cursing the heavens for this cruel irony, why return him to a point where he is already crippled and powerless. The door swings open with a sharp crack, and his sister rushes into the room, her face lighting up with a mixture of pure, unadulterated relief at seeing him conscious. She lunges forward to embrace him, her tears of joy masking the fact that he is still trapped in a body that refuses to move, leaving him to navigate this second chance while fighting the ghost of his own helplessness. Shen Qing forces a gentle, weary smile as he looks at his sister, masking the burning intensity of his inner turmoil with a facade of brotherly affection. She clings to him with tear-filled eyes, her voice trembling as she vows to dedicate her entire existence to his care, completely unaware of the dangerous game he is playing. A dark, intrusive thought flashes through his mind as he envisions the snake who ruined him, his resolve hardening into a weapon of cold, calculated survival. He stares into the middle distance, his jaw set in a grim line as he realizes that the path to vengeance requires patience, strategy, and a terrifying amount of restraint. The atmosphere in the room shifts instantly as the door opens, revealing the architect of his misery, Xiao Tiankai, stepping in with a sickeningly polite and professional air. Tiankai offers a hollow, practiced apology for the accident, his eyes hidden behind wire-rimmed glasses as he plays the part of the concerned corporate ally to perfection. Shen Qing's internal monologue screams for blood, his eyes narrowing as he fights the urge to lunge at the man who orchestrated his downfall and stole his future. The traitor casually drops the bomb that he has already seized control of all company assets, his smug tone dripping with the arrogance of a man who believes he has already won. Shen Qing forces himself to remain calm, recognizing that a direct confrontation now would be suicide, so he swallows his pride and prepares to play the long game. He watches Tiankai with a piercing, analytical gaze, his mind racing to formulate a new strategy that will allow him to dismantle his enemy from the shadows. Xiao Tiankai maintains his sickeningly polite facade, feigning concern for Shen Qing's mental state while subtly pressuring his sister to abandon the bedside. A digital advertisement for the Divine Path game flickers into view, a haunting reminder that the supernatural powers which destroyed his life are already bleeding into reality. Tiankai drops the mask for a split second, his predatory grin widening as he taunts Shen Qing with the terrifying truth that game abilities are now real. The tension spikes as Tiankai reaches out to pull the sister away, his smooth movements hiding the calculated malice of a man who views everyone as a pawn. Shen Qing snaps, his eyes blazing with a dark, supernatural intensity as he lunges forward to protect his sister from the snake's touch. The traitor freezes, his smug confidence momentarily rattled by the sudden, fierce defiance radiating from the man he thought he had already broken. Shen Qing forces his voice to remain steady, demanding solitude while playing the part of the trusting boss to keep his enemy off balance. Tiankai recovers his composure with a practiced, oily charm, offering his services while preparing to slink back into the shadows to continue his schemes. Shen Qing watches him go with a gaze sharp enough to cut glass, his internal monologue burning with pure, unadulterated hatred for the actor in the white suit. The door clicks shut behind the departing villain, leaving Shen Qing alone to plot his vengeance against the man who thinks he has already won. Xiao Tiankai seethes with pure, unadulterated malice, his face twisting into a mask of frustration as he curses the fact that his former mentor survived the brutal car accident. Shen Qing's sister looks on with genuine concern, her eyes wide as she tries to decipher the sudden, aggressive shift in her brother's demeanor. Shen Qing ignores her confusion, his finger pointing with absolute conviction as he demands she liquidate his remaining savings to secure the high-end gaming capsule. A vision of the Divine Path armor manifests in the air, a glowing, ethereal herald of the game's impending integration into the fabric of their reality. His sister recoils in disbelief, her face contorted with frustration as she struggles to understand why he would abandon his career for a digital distraction. Shen Qing clenches his fist, his expression hardening into a look of ironclad resolve as he vows to use the game as the catalyst for his ultimate revenge. Back at the office, Xiao Tiankai leans back in his chair, humming a tune of victory while basking in the comfort of his stolen corporate throne. A subordinate reports that Shen Qing has been effectively neutralized, confirming that the broken man is wasting his time on gaming rather than fighting for his company. Tiankai flashes a predatory, triumphant grin, relishing the thought that his rival is finally out of the way and his own position is completely secure. He glares at a framed photograph of the siblings, his cold heart harboring a final, arrogant promise that he will let them live only as long as they remain pathetic and defeated. Xiao Tiankai sits comfortably in his high-backed chair, his posture radiating the arrogance of a man who believes he has permanently neutralized his greatest rival. He dismissively waves his hand at his subordinate, ordering him to indulge Shen Qing's sudden gaming obsession while keeping a hawk-like watch on his every move. The subordinate stands at attention, his face a mask of professional obedience as he absorbs the order to monitor the broken man in the hospital. Tiankai leans forward, his eyes glinting with a sharp, predatory malice as he demands that his lackey stop using his old title and acknowledge his new stolen authority. The subordinate recoils, his eyes widening in sudden, sharp realization as he quickly corrects himself to address the snake by his new, self-appointed rank. The camera pans to the sterile, imposing exterior of the hospital, a place that serves as both a sanctuary for recovery and a cage for the man who knows too much. Inside the quiet room, Shen Qing sits in his wheelchair, his gaze fixed on the massive, futuristic gaming capsule that represents his only bridge to a future of power. He contemplates the astronomical cost of the device, fully aware that he is gambling his entire net worth on the hope that his future knowledge will pay off. Staring out the window, he reflects on the terrifying reality that the game's supernatural abilities are already bleeding into the world, a secret he holds alone. He settles into the capsule, clutching the headset with a grim, ironclad resolve as he whispers the name of his enemy, preparing to begin his long-awaited hunt. Shen Qing settles into the neural interface with a look of absolute, cold-blooded determination, his mind screaming a silent challenge to the traitor who thinks he has already won. The digital void welcomes him with a shimmering, ethereal display, signaling the start of his journey into the unknown depths of the Divine Path. He stands in the virtual lobby, savoring the sensation of his limbs responding perfectly, the crushing weight of his real-world disability finally stripped away. A prompt flickers before his eyes, demanding he establish his digital identity to begin the climb toward the power he desperately needs. He taps his chin, a smirk playing on his lips as he decides to reclaim the legendary handle from his previous life, Morning Wine Evening Song. The system chimes with a crisp, digital confirmation, locking in his identity and immediately pushing him toward the pivotal moment of class selection. A pantheon of spectral warriors appears before him, each representing a path to power, but his focus remains locked on the singular goal of his vengeance. He stares at the options with a steely gaze, knowing that every second wasted is a second Xiao Tiankai gains more ground in the real world. He reaches out to claim the Ranger class, the very specialization that defined his past mastery and the only tool sharp enough to dismantle his enemy. The transformation completes in a blinding surge of energy, and he stands fully armored in his signature gear, the red cape flowing as he prepares to hunt. A brilliant, golden light erupts around Shen Qing as the system recognizes his VIP status, bestowing upon him the legendary Knightin bloodline and the coveted Shadow Ranger class. He stares into the digital ether with a smirk of pure realization, finally understanding why this game is the most sought-after commodity in the entire world. The system interface displays the terrifying potential of his new lineage, detailing massive percentage boosts to his accuracy, critical hits, evasion, and speed that will make him a ghost in the dark. He calculates the sheer tactical advantage this provides, knowing that doubling his leveling efficiency at night is the exact edge he needs to leave every other player in the dust. The game prompts him to select his starter pack, presenting him with a choice between high-tier chests that shimmer with the promise of untold power. He scoffs at the exorbitant real-world costs required to unlock these treasures, recognizing the predatory microtransaction scheme that once bled him dry. A wave of bitter memories washes over him as he looks at his current, pathetic gear, recalling how being broke in his past life left him with nothing but literal trash. He reflects on how Xiao Tiankai's calculated sabotage stripped him of his assets, forcing him into a cycle of poverty that made it impossible to keep pace with the competition. With a roar of defiance, he commits to the ultimate gamble, offering up his house and every last share he owns in the Rising Sun Group to secure the legendary gold chest. As the system begins the high-stakes evaluation of his entire life's worth, he steels his nerves, knowing there is absolutely no turning back from this path to vengeance. The system confirms the evaluation is complete, and the gold chest is finally unlocked, bathing the digital void in a blinding, triumphant radiance. Shen Qing stands before the spinning lottery wheel, his posture radiating the calm focus of a man who knows exactly what he is about to claim. A golden symbol of immense power manifests in the air, signaling that the lottery has hit the jackpot and granted him a divine-tier reward. A massive pillar of golden energy descends from the heavens, wrapping around him as the game acknowledges the birth of a new, game-breaking force. He inspects his gauntlet, his eyes widening as the system notification confirms he has successfully obtained the legendary ability known as evolution. He raises his hand, watching the golden flames of his new power dance around his fingers, realizing that his path to vengeance has just become unstoppable. The interface displays the terrifying mechanics of his passive talent, promising a guaranteed tier-up for every piece of loot he manages to secure. A secondary prompt reveals the active evolution skill, a devastating tool that can force items and abilities to transcend their natural limits. He wears a predatory smirk, knowing that while the rest of the world grinds for scraps, he will be forging god-tier gear to crush his enemies. The system issues a final, chilling command to prepare for the descent, marking the moment his true hunt for Xiao Tiankai officially begins. Shen Qing stands bathed in the brilliant, ethereal glow of the system's arrival, his Shadow Ranger armor gleaming with the promise of a power that transcends the digital realm. He surveys the bustling starter village from above, a sea of clueless players swarming the streets like ants, completely unaware of the storm that is about to descend. He observes the crowd with a cynical eye, noting that most of these fools are still shackled to the same basic, low-tier equipment that crippled his own progress in the past. A flicker of recognition crosses his face as he spots a group of players behaving with the same desperate, short-sighted greed he remembers all too well. Suddenly, a chaotic chase erupts in the middle of the path, with a group of amateur warriors sprinting headlong after a single frantic chicken. One of the players shouts with unbridled, pathetic excitement, having just discovered that these basic creatures are the primary source of early game experience and food. Their companions join the fray with equal fervor, their eyes lighting up at the prospect of grinding out levels through the most mundane, trivial tasks imaginable. Shen Qing watches their display of amateur ambition with a cold, detached smirk, realizing that he has absolutely nothing to fear from such small-minded competition. He turns his back on their ridiculous spectacle, his red cape swirling as he prepares to leave these bottom feeders to their poultry hunting games. He stands firm, radiating an aura of lethal focus while the desperate cries of the players behind him echo through the village, completely beneath his notice. Shen Qing steps into the dense, shadowed forest outside the starter town, his eyes scanning the gloom for the perfect spot to begin his ruthless climb. He knows the clock is ticking and that a First Blood boss bonus is the only way to secure a lead, so he steels his nerves for the grind ahead. A quick check of his inventory reveals a pathetic beginner's bow and basic cloth armor, gear so laughably weak it makes his blood boil with frustration. He scoffs at the useless equipment, realizing that wasting his precious evolution ability on such trash would be a tactical blunder of the highest order. He paces through the clearing, his mind racing as he calculates how to maximize his daily evolution cooldown to create a gap no other player can bridge. A sudden, brilliant idea strikes him as he stares at his own gauntleted hand, wondering if his innate bloodline is the key to true, game-breaking power. He focuses his intent, and the Knightin bloodline trait flares to life, wrapping his body in a crackling, dark energy that feels like pure, unadulterated potential. The shadows begin to coalesce around him, forming a terrifying, spectral silhouette that mirrors his own form and pulses with a cold, supernatural intensity. He watches in awe as the manifestation of his bloodline looms behind him, a dark avatar of his own ambition ready to be forged into something greater. With a final, decisive command, he triggers the evolution skill, forcing his very essence to transcend its limits and shatter the balance of the game forever. The air crackles with raw electric energy as Shen Qing's armor pulses with a blinding, spectral blue light, signaling the final stages of his bloodline's metamorphosis. A massive, ghostly warrior projection towers behind him, a manifestation of the Night King bloodline that confirms his evolution was a complete and total success. The system interface floods his vision with a cascade of game-breaking stat boosts, detailing the massive increases to his accuracy, critical hit rate, and evasion. He flexes his gauntleted hand, watching the dark, ethereal flames dance across his fingers as he realizes the sheer, terrifying potential of his new form. His character sheet glows with newfound power, displaying a massive HP pool and offensive stats that dwarf any other player currently in the game. A predatory grin spreads across his face, his eyes burning with the cold, calculated realization that he has officially broken the game's balance. He turns his gaze toward the Wild Wolf Zone, his mind already mapping out the most efficient path to crush every boss in his way. He steps into the deep, overgrown brush, his red cape flowing behind him like a banner of impending doom for anyone who dares cross his path. In the distance, a group of amateur players struggles to coordinate their attacks against a single wolf, oblivious to the apex predator watching them from the shadows. Shen Qing observes their clumsy, inefficient teamwork with a look of utter disdain, knowing that their reliance on parties will only keep them weak while he ascends to godhood. The arrogant sword wielder looms over his prey, his face twisted into a smug, predatory grin as he prepares to deliver the final blow to secure his easy experience. Shen Qing watches from the shadows, his expression cold and detached as he observes the group of amateur players stumbling blindly into a lethal trap. He narrows his eyes, his mind calculating the inevitable outcome as he reminds himself that these fools have no idea how the Wild Wolf Zone actually functions. The hooded assassin in the group laughs, his eyes gleaming with greedy anticipation as he urges his companions to corner their target and finish the job. A lone wolf lets out a piercing, mournful howl that cuts through the forest air, signaling the arrival of the rest of the pack to defend their territory. From the dense, dark thicket, dozens of glowing red eyes ignite in the gloom, revealing that the hunters have just become the hunted. The sword wielder's confidence shatters instantly, his jaw dropping in sheer, unadulterated terror as he realizes they are completely surrounded by a ravenous, vengeful pack. The archer panics, his voice cracking with desperation as he stares at the encroaching shadows, finally grasping the gravity of their fatal, short-sighted mistake. Before he can even draw his bow, a massive wolf lunges from the darkness, pinning the assassin to the forest floor with terrifying, primal force. Blood sprays across the undergrowth as the pack descends, tearing into their victims with a brutal efficiency that serves as a grim lesson in survival. The archer desperately looses a volley of arrows into the air, hoping to stem the tide of the encroaching wolf pack that has turned his hunt into a nightmare. His face contorts into a mask of pure, unadulterated panic as he screams for the creatures to stay back, his bravado completely shattered by the reality of the ambush. The pack ignores his pleas, swarming over him with lethal intent as the forest erupts in a chaotic, bloody struggle that marks the end of their ill-fated expedition. The sword wielder fights back with everything he has, his blade flashing in the dim light, but the visceral, hyperrealistic pain of the wolf's bite leaves him reeling in agony. Another player cries out for help, his staff glowing with a faint, useless light as the wolves close in to finish the job, leaving him completely exposed. The group is systematically dismantled, their cries of despair echoing through the trees as they are forced to accept their inevitable trip to the respawn point. Shen Qing watches the carnage unfold from his hidden vantage point, his eyes gleaming with a cold, predatory focus as he prepares to capitalize on their failure. He draws his bow, the spectral projection of the Night King manifesting behind him to channel an overwhelming surge of dark, concentrated energy into his weapon. A ruthless smirk plays across his lips, his mind already calculating the massive experience gain he will harvest once the wolves finish off these pathetic, greedy fools. He releases the string, sending a lethal, glowing projectile screaming through the forest to claim the final rewards of a battle he didn't even have to fight. Shen Qing's blade carves a lethal arc through the air, striking the wild wolf with surgical precision and ending its threat in a single, fluid motion. The system chimes with a triumphant notification, confirming the kill and signaling his long-awaited ascent to level 2, his stats surging with newfound, raw potential. He kneels amidst the forest floor, harvesting the high-grade wolf meat with a cold, calculating efficiency, knowing that every resource is a stepping stone toward his ultimate revenge. The forest erupts with the snarling fury of a fresh pack, but Shen Qing remains utterly unfazed, his posture radiating the confidence of an apex predator. He stands his ground as the wolves close in, his mind already dissecting their attack patterns to test the limits of his current, rapidly evolving build. With a burst of supernatural speed, he sidesteps a lunging beast, the wolf's jaws snapping at empty air as Shen Qing effortlessly dances around his confused prey. He taunts the snarling creature with a predatory smirk, daring the beast to test his reflexes while he gauges the true speed of his Night King bloodline. He explodes into motion, a blur of dark armor and flowing red cape, outstripping the wolves with a grace that defies his low level. His eyes burn with a fierce, analytical intensity as he realizes that his bloodline's speed is already breaking the game's early-level constraints. He sets his sights on the zone's boss, his heart racing with the thrill of the hunt as he prepares to gamble everything on a high-stakes, level-defying battle. Shen Qing sprints across the lush, rolling hills with the grace of a seasoned predator, his red cape snapping in the wind as he leaves the forest behind. The pack of wolves, caught off guard by his sudden burst of speed, skids to a halt in the tall grass, their red eyes burning with frustrated primal rage. He comes to a stop under the bright, open sky, his silhouette framed against the sun as he surveys the vast, untamed expanse of the bison zone. He takes a moment to steady his breathing, his mind already calculating the level requirements and the potential loot drops hidden within this high-stakes territory. Suddenly, the silence is broken by a voice from behind, and he turns to find a trio of players watching him with a mix of curiosity and condescension. The party, consisting of a mage, an archer, and a warrior, stands before him, their gear marking them as mid-level players who clearly think they own the place. The archer flashes a bright, inviting smile, oblivious to his true strength, and offers him a spot in their group to farm the local bison population. The mage immediately scoffs at the suggestion, pointing a finger at Shen Qing's low level and loudly declaring that he would only be a burden to their efficiency. Shen Qing barely spares them a glance, his expression remaining cold and indifferent as he dismisses their offer with a wave of his hand, intent on moving deeper. The warrior's face contorts into a mask of pure, indignant shock, his ego bruised by the audacity of a low-level player walking away from his so-called generosity. Shen Qing stands his ground against the trio of mid-level players, his posture radiating a cold, dismissive confidence that makes their petty offer of a party seem laughable. The warrior of the group steps forward, his face twisted in a mask of arrogant concern as he warns the lone wolf about the lethal dangers lurking in the forbidden zones. He sneers with a predatory grin, relishing the chance to lecture the newcomer on the brutal death penalties that await anyone foolish enough to wander off the beaten path. Shen Qing listens with a detached, icy calm, his eyes narrowing as he absorbs their warnings while mentally cataloging every bit of their pathetic, small-minded advice. The mage watches from the sidelines, his arms crossed in a display of smug superiority as he openly mocks the idea of anyone trying to survive the high-level areas alone. Ignoring their desperate attempts to assert control, Shen Qing turns his back on the group, his red cape snapping in the wind as he prepares to walk away. A hand reaches out from the party to stop him, but Shen Qing moves with a fluid, ghost-like grace, slipping past their reach before they can even react. He strides deep into the wilderness until the lush greenery gives way to the jagged, ominous cliffs of the Viper Zone, a place where only the truly prepared dare to tread. Standing at the threshold of the hidden boss lair, he stares into the dark, mist-filled cavern with a look of absolute, unwavering focus, knowing his target is finally within reach. He steps into the shadows of the cave, the faint, chilling hiss of the Viper boss echoing through the chamber as he prepares to claim his first major victory. Shen Qing stands before the towering spotted python, his mind flooded with bitter memories of the grueling, years-long struggle he endured against this very beast in his previous life. He activates his ocular interface, his gaze locking onto the serpent as he recalls the precise, hidden weak point located at the back of its neck. The spotted python lets out a deafening, primal hiss, its red eyes burning with territorial rage as the system displays its formidable level 10 status and 800 health points. Shen Qing remains completely unfazed by the boss's imposing presence, his own massive health pool of 1,300 points dwarfing the creature thanks to his legendary Night King bloodline. The serpent lunges with terrifying speed, its massive jaws snapping open to swallow him whole, but Shen Qing tracks the movement with the cold precision of a veteran. He leaps into the air with supernatural agility, effortlessly dodging the strike while his mind cycles through the familiar, predictable attack patterns he has already memorized by heart. With his bow drawn and his focus absolute, he prepares to unleash a strike, confident that his superior speed will keep him untouchable throughout this entire encounter. He fires a glowing, ethereal arrow that streaks through the cavern like a bolt of lightning, aimed perfectly at the creature's vulnerable, exposed neck. The projectile connects with a sharp, resounding impact, dealing damage to the boss, but the meager number appearing above its head reveals a frustrating reality. Shen Qing's expression darkens as he realizes his Night King bloodline boosted his defense and speed, but left his actual attack power embarrassingly low for such a high-level fight. The spotted python lashes out with a whip-like strike of its massive tail, forcing Shen Qing to scramble up the sheer rock face to avoid being crushed. He clings to the stone, his eyes locked on the serpent as he realizes that brute force won't work, so he commits to the kiting strategy. With a fluid motion, he draws his bow and looses a piercing arrow, striking the beast's scales and forcing it to recoil from the sudden, stinging impact. He keeps his distance, dancing through the air as he lands another precise shot, his movements calculated to keep the boss trapped in a cycle of frustration. A smirk tugs at his lips as he taunts the creature, daring it to match his speed while he prepares to exploit the buffs from his bloodline. Suddenly, the python's maw glows with a sickly, vibrant green light, signaling that the beast is preparing to unleash its most dangerous, area-denying trump card. Shen Qing's eyes widen in genuine shock as he realizes the boss is channeling its signature poison gas, a move that threatens to turn the tide instantly. The toxic cloud erupts, forcing him to retreat as the corrosive mist begins to eat away at his health, his tactical advantage slipping through his fingers. Numbers flash across his vision as his HP begins to tick down, the relentless drain forcing him to rethink his entire approach to this deadly encounter. He grits his teeth, calculating the remaining seconds he has to survive, knowing that any other player would have already been sent back to the respawn point. Shen Qing stands his ground within the suffocating, toxic haze, his health bar ticking down with every agonizing second as the spotted python looms over him like a nightmare. He channels his focus into his bow, the air vibrating with ethereal blue energy as the system confirms the activation of his game-changing Arrow of Life skill. A singular, glowing projectile manifests, humming with the promise of a critical strike that will finally turn the tide of this brutal, high-stakes boss encounter. He releases the string, the arrow screaming through the cavern air toward the serpent's vulnerable neck, catching the beast completely off guard with its lethal, blinding speed. The projectile splits the air with a thunderous crack, striking the python's hide with such force that the creature recoils in genuine, startled confusion. A massive damage number erupts above the boss's head, the critical hit landing perfectly on its weak point and sending a shockwave of pain through its massive frame. Blood sprays from the wound as the serpent lets out a piercing, enraged hiss, clearly rattled by the sudden, devastating precision of its prey. Shen Qing wears a cold, predatory smirk, his eyes burning with the absolute conviction that he has found the rhythm needed to dismantle this monster in under 2 minutes. The python lashes out in a blind, desperate fury, its tail slamming into the cavern floor and shattering the stone into 1,000 jagged flying shards. He leaps into the air with effortless grace, drawing his bow mid-flight to deliver another punishing blow that will drive the final nail into the boss's coffin. Shen Qing narrows his eyes, his tactical mind racing as he realizes the spotted python is playing a defensive game, refusing to grant him a single clean opening. He leaps into the air, drawing his bow to loose a high-velocity arrow that whistles through the cavern, desperate to disrupt the serpent's relentless, suffocating pressure. The projectile strikes true, carving into the beast's side and forcing its health bar to plummet, yet the creature remains dangerously active and far from defeated. He lands on the uneven stone, his analytical gaze darting across the boss's massive frame as he wonders if the underbelly's softness is the key to victory. He plants his feet firmly, drawing back his bowstring with ironclad resolve, knowing that every missed shot is a step closer to his own digital demise. Suddenly, the cavern floor trembles violently as the python slams its tail into the bedrock, triggering a massive, earth-shattering cave-in that threatens to bury him alive. He narrowly avoids the falling debris, his heart hammering against his ribs as he realizes the boss is weaponizing the very environment to crush him. He stares up at the crumbling ceiling, cursing the sheer brutality of the Viper Zone's apex predator while his health bar begins to tick down from the ambient poison. The spotted python opens its maw, unleashing a fresh, pulsating wave of toxic green gas that floods the chamber and forces him into a desperate retreat. He gasps for air as the poisonous mist clings to his armor, his eyes widening in horror as he watches the damage overtime effect stack, rapidly draining his life force. Shen Qing wipes the sweat from his brow, his mind already calculating the massive loot potential waiting for him once the boss finally breathes its last. With a flick of his wrist, he accesses his inventory, his armored fingers closing around the precious, life-saving resource he has been hoarding for this exact moment. He pulls the high-grade wolf meat into the physical realm, the item's aura pulsing with the promise of restoration as he prepares to consume it. He bites into the meat, the system immediately registering the intake and granting him a critical regeneration buff that will keep him in the fight. The buff kicks in, flooding his system with a steady stream of health while he continues to rain down precise, punishing arrows upon the serpent. He realizes that while the meat cannot purge the lethal toxins from his veins, it perfectly offsets the continuous damage, allowing him to stay aggressive. He keeps his focus locked on the spotted python, his eyes narrowing as he realizes the window of opportunity is closing and he must act now. He channels his remaining energy into a final, devastating barrage, his bow glowing with an intense, ethereal light as he prepares to deliver the killing blow. A savage, triumphant grin spreads across his face as he realizes the boss is attempting to flee, and he knows there is absolutely no escape. He looses a final high-velocity shot that streaks through the cavern, pinning the serpent down and sealing its fate in this brutal, high-stakes duel. The final, decisive arrow strikes true, carving deep into the serpent's hide and draining the last of its vitality as the system registers the lethal blow. Shen Qing stands amidst the swirling blue energy of his Shadow Ranger class, his bow still humming with power as he prepares to claim his hard-won glory. A massive damage indicator flashes across the cavern, signaling the absolute destruction of the giant Snake King and the end of his grueling high-stakes trial. The poison status effect finally dissipates from his body, leaving him standing tall and victorious in the dim, cavernous light of the Viper Zone. A glowing system prompt manifests before him, offering the legendary recognition he deserves and asking if he wishes to remain a ghost in the shadows. He stares at the interface with a cold, unwavering gaze, his mind rejecting the safety of anonymity in favor of a much more dangerous public path. With a sharp, deliberate movement, he rejects the option to hide his identity, his finger pressing firmly against the screen to broadcast his name to the world. The system acknowledges his choice, and a golden, server-wide announcement begins to materialize, immortalizing his triumph over the first boss of Divine Path. The notification ripples out across the entire server, appearing in the sky above the starter village to shock the masses of players currently grinding for scraps. A random player, mid-hunt for a simple chicken, freezes in utter disbelief as the Name Morning Wine Evening song burns into the sky, signaling the arrival of a new legend. A trio of arrogant players stands in the forest, their faces twisted in confusion as they struggle to comprehend how anyone could have cleared the boss so quickly. The forest floor is littered with the remnants of their failed hunt, a stark contrast to the efficiency required to claim the server-first achievement. The lead warrior stands over the carcass of his own kill, his chest puffed out with the delusional belief that he and his party are the undisputed masters of the zone. His companion beams with unearned confidence, his fist clenched in a gesture of victory as he eagerly anticipates the legendary rewards for a feat they haven't actually accomplished. The party leader maintains his smug, predatory facade, oblivious to the fact that the true apex predator has already snatched the glory right out from under their noses. He leans in close to his teammate, his voice dripping with condescending assurance as he promises them fame and fortune while the system prepares to shatter their reality. Suddenly, the sky erupts with a blinding, golden notification that freezes the entire party in their tracks, the announcement of Morning Wine Evening Song's victory hanging over them like a death sentence. The female archer's face drains of color, her eyes wide with the terrifying realization that their entire worldview has just been dismantled by a single, unknown player. The warrior's jaw drops as his ego is pulverized, his mind reeling from the impossible truth that a solo player has outpaced their entire coordinated team. The final member of the group looks up at the sky in a daze, his voice trembling as he questions the identity of the legend who just humiliated them all. The system interface erupts with a cascade of rewards, confirming that his high-stakes gamble against the boss has paid off with a massive experience boost and a coveted silver chest. Shen Qing stands amidst the lingering blue aura of his power, his level surging to 7 as he revels in the sheer, exhilarating efficiency of his rapid ascent. A notification chimes in the air, revealing the discovery of rare, extinct crystal coins that promise to unlock secret items and manipulate NPC favor in ways no other player can imagine. He stares at the shimmering blue gems floating before him, his eyes narrowing as he processes the immense strategic value of this forgotten currency. A smirk of pure, calculated satisfaction plays on his lips, knowing that while he never saw these coins in his past life, they are the perfect tools to secure his future dominance. He turns his attention back to the glowing silver chest, his mind already dissecting the potential treasures hidden within that will further widen the gap between him and his rivals. With a flick of his wrist, he channels his energy, preparing to store the spoils of his victory into his inventory before anyone else can interfere. The chest and its golden contents dissolve into streams of light, pulled into his digital void as he systematically clears the cavern of every last scrap of loot. The system reveals the silver snake sword, a powerful weapon that pulses with venomous energy, though he immediately notes it lacks the synergy he needs for his ranger build. He scoffs at the blade's incompatibility, already planning to flip the high-tier gear for a massive profit that will bankroll his next phase of total, unadulterated vengeance. The system interface displays the stats for the green scale armor, a silver-tier chest piece that boasts a powerful scale shield effect to bolster his survivability. Shen Qing inspects the gear with a critical eye, noting that while the common version is nothing but basic padding, this silver-tier variant is a genuine game-changer. He stands in the dim cavern, arms crossed as he weighs the item's potential against his current level, frustrated that he cannot yet equip such a vital upgrade. A shadow of doubt crosses his face as he realizes his luck with drops has been mediocre at best, leaving him without any gear tailored to his Shadow Ranger class. He sighs in defeat, his hand resting on his forehead as he laments the lack of a qualitative leap in power despite taking down a boss. Suddenly, a spark of realization ignites in his eyes as he remembers the silver chest still sitting in his inventory, a final roll of the dice. He gestures toward the void, summoning the chest into the physical world as a swirling vortex of blue energy begins to envelop the ornate container. He braces himself for the reveal, his voice tight with anticipation as he demands the system open the chest and prays for something other than useless trash. A brilliant pillar of light erupts from the chest as it cracks open, the sheer intensity of the energy forcing him to shield his eyes from the glare. The light coalesces into the form of a specialized bow, its sleek design and multiple arrows signaling that he might have finally secured the weapon he desperately needs. The system interface flashes the glorious stats of the 7-star piercing arrow, a silver-tier masterpiece that promises to shred enemy health bars with true damage. Shen Qing stares at the glowing notification with a predatory grin, his eyes alight with the realization that he has just secured a genuine god-tier skill. He holds the skill orb in his palm, his mind already racing through the tactical implications of hitting level 10 to unlock this absolute game-breaker. A sudden, desperate cry for help echoes from the dark, jagged crevices of the cavern, pulling his attention away from his newfound power. He turns his gaze toward the shadows, his expression sharpening as he spots a figure cowering in the gloom, trapped by the encroaching threat. The woman, cornered and terrified, clutches at the stone floor while venomous snakes hiss around her, completely unaware of the player watching from the ledge. Shen Qing narrows his eyes, his analytical mind instantly recognizing the NPC as Madame Gu, a character who should have been safely tucked away in the city. He digs into the archives of his past life, recalling a legendary forum thread that whispered of a hidden quest involving this very woman and her missing daughter. He scoffs at the memory of the skeptical comments he once read, where players dismissed the quest as a mere hoax or a developer's cruel joke. Madame Gu reaches out with a trembling hand, her voice cracking as she begs for salvation from the monsters that have turned her sanctuary into a tomb. Shen Qing stands tall in the cavern, his voice calm and collected as he informs the rescued woman that the threat has been neutralized. Madame Gu looks up at him with a weary, vulnerable expression, explaining that her foot is injured and requesting his aid to escape the dark lair. He moves with practiced ease, scooping her up into his arms as the system marks the successful rescue with a soft, ethereal glow. He carries her through the jagged terrain, his red cape billowing behind him as he navigates the treacherous path toward the surface. He sets her down gently upon a large, flat rock, his posture remaining alert as he keeps his eyes fixed on the path ahead. A notification chimes in the air, confirming that his rapport with the NPC has deepened as the affection meter ticks upward. Madame Gu offers him a pair of silver coins as a token of her gratitude, her hand outstretched in a gesture of simple, humble thanks. Shen Qing stares at the currency, his mind racing with the knowledge that while these coins are a massive early-game windfall, they are a trap for the short-sighted. He recalls the hidden guide from his past life, reminding himself that accepting this meager payment would permanently lock him out of the true, legendary quest reward. With a firm, polite refusal, he gently pushes her hand away, choosing to play the hero and secure the much greater prize that awaits him. Madame Gu expresses her sincere gratitude, her words of praise for his character triggering a subtle but significant boost to their rapport. She shifts her posture on the rocky ledge, her expression turning somber as she prepares to ask for a far more personal and dangerous favor. Shen Qing stands ready, his calm demeanor projecting an aura of reliability that encourages the NPC to open up about her true plight. She finally reveals the heart of her sorrow, explaining that her daughter has vanished and pleading for his assistance in tracking the girl down. The system immediately validates his tactical decision, flashing a notification that the legendary hidden quest has been officially unlocked for him. A look of genuine surprise washes over his face, his eyes widening as he realizes the rumors from his past life were entirely accurate. He steps forward with a confident, heroic flair, assuring the distressed woman that he will take on the burden of finding her missing child. Madame Gu begins to recount the tragic sequence of events, explaining how they were traveling toward the village when a fairy rabbit lured her daughter away. She continues her tale with a heavy heart, admitting that her search led her deep into the treacherous Snake Valley, only to find the area empty. Shen Qing listens with intense, analytical focus, his mind already processing the details as he presses her for any further clues to guide his next move. Shen Qing stands in the dark, his mind dissecting the vague rumors of a hidden area south of Snake Valley that he once read about in a forgotten forum thread. He knows the general region is massive and the entrance is incredibly well concealed, making the search for this secret location a daunting task for any ordinary player. A confident smirk touches his lips as he recalls his past life, remembering how his lack of funds forced him to linger in the beginner zone for ages. Because of that extended stay, he possesses an intimate, encyclopedic knowledge of the map that allows him to navigate the starting areas with absolute, unerring precision. He mentally cross-references the spawn points of the fairy rabbits with the hints from the guide, narrowing down the search to the treacherous demon spider cave. He lets out a triumphant shout of realization, his sudden burst of energy catching Madame Gu completely off guard as he prepares to abandon the standard path. He pivots and sprints away with explosive speed, leaving the startled NPC behind as he charges toward the horizon to hunt down the hidden location. Madame Gu reaches out in a desperate, futile attempt to stop him, pleading for him to return so she can show him the photo of her missing daughter. Shen Qing ignores her cries, his eyes burning with the memory of the young girl's mischievous face from his previous life, a detail he could never possibly forget. He pushes deeper into the dense, overgrown forest, his focus locked on the objective as he realizes that finding the corrupted village is the key to everything. Shen Qing navigates the dense, overgrown forest with the caution of a veteran, his eyes darting toward the strange, glowing-eyed rabbits that watch his every move from the shadows. He emerges into a desolate, ruined village where the silence is heavy with the stench of decay, his red cape standing out against the backdrop of splintered wood and rubble. A confident smirk plays across his face as he surveys the wreckage, his mind confirming that he has finally arrived at the long-forgotten entrance to the dungeon. He stalks through the debris, his armor clinking softly as he approaches the ancient, stone-lined well that serves as the gateway to the demon spider cave. He peers into the abyss of the well, his eyes narrowing with cold, calculating focus as he prepares to descend into the heart of the corrupted zone. Suddenly, the air behind him screams as a zombified villager lunges from the darkness, raising a rusted pickaxe to deliver a lethal, bone-crushing blow. Shen Qing reacts with lightning-fast reflexes, his body twisting in a blur of motion to evade the strike that shatters the stone floor where he stood a second ago. He pivots on his heel, his legs snapping out with brutal, kinetic force to deliver a devastating kick that sends the undead attacker reeling backward. The creature recovers instantly, its red eyes burning with a primal, ravenous hunger as it crouches low, preparing to launch another feral assault against him. Shen Qing stands his ground, his expression hardening into a mask of lethal intent as he prepares to dismantle this guardian and claim the path forward. A single, perfectly placed arrow pierces the chest of the undead guardian, erupting in a spray of toxic green fluid that signals the creature's immediate collapse. Shen Qing watches with cold detachment as the zombified villager falls, his bow still raised and ready to strike down any other threats lurking in the ruins. With a swift, lethal motion, he drives another projectile into the fallen enemy, ensuring that the corrupted threat is completely neutralized before it can rise again. The heavy, armored boot of the Shadow Ranger descends, crushing the remains of the Guardian into the dirt as he surveys the grim aftermath of the skirmish. He stands amidst the wreckage, his expression calm and collected as he reflects on how his prior knowledge of this zone saved him from a deadly, hidden ambush. The corpse of the villager ruptures further, revealing the grotesque truth as parasitic spiders crawl from the wound, confirming the source of the village's horrific corruption. He stares down at the infestation with a look of grim determination, his mind already calculating the necessity of purging this nest before the parasites can spread. With a final, decisive stomp, he obliterates the remaining spiders, his movements efficient and devoid of hesitation as he clears the path toward the dungeon entrance. The system chimes with a surge of power, his level climbing to 8 as the blue aura of his class envelops him, marking another step toward his ultimate goal. He turns his gaze toward the setting sun, his eyes narrowing as he prepares to wait for the cover of night to challenge the formidable level 12 demon spider boss. 2 hours pass in the blink of an eye as the moon climbs high, signaling the perfect moment for the hunt to truly begin. The Night King bloodline surges to life, bathing Shen Qing in a brilliant blue aura that pushes his combat stats to their absolute terrifying limits. With a predatory smirk and eyes burning with cold, analytical focus, he prepares to descend into the darkness and claim the treasures hidden within. He leaps into the abyss, his red cape trailing behind him like a banner of war as he plunges deep into the heart of the demon's spider cave. Landing amidst the suffocating webs, he notes with grim satisfaction that his passive night vision allows him to navigate this hellscape without a single torch. He treads carefully past the skeletal remains of fallen adventurers, their armor still clinging to their bones as a silent warning of the horrors that lurk here. A wave of nausea washes over him as the stench of decay fills the air, but he steels his nerves, knowing he cannot afford a single moment of weakness. From the shadows, the demon spider hosts emerge, their glowing red eyes tracking his every move as they prepare to defend their grotesque, parasitic nest. He grips his bow, his mind racing as he recalls the lethal mechanic that forces him to fight with surgical precision rather than raw, mindless aggression. He unleashes a barrage of ethereal arrows, dancing through the cavern with lethal grace as he begins the systematic, high-stakes purge of the spider infestation. Shen Qing unleashes a flurry of arrows, the glowing projectiles whistling through the dark cavern to strike the descending demon spiders with lethal, pinpoint accuracy. One of the arrows finds its mark, pinning a spider firmly against the stone wall as a splash of toxic green fluid erupts from the impact. He stands his ground with a cold, predatory smirk, his eyes locking onto the chaos as he commands the creatures to cease their movement. A system notification pulses in the air, warning him of the extreme danger lurking just beyond the next layer of thick, suffocating webs. He remains completely unfazed by the threat, his confidence radiating as he reminds himself that the greatest risks always yield the most legendary rewards. He advances into the heart of the nest, where a sea of pulsating purple egg sacs covers the floor, waiting to hatch their parasitic horrors. A sudden, desperate plea for help cuts through the silence, forcing him to pause as he scans the shadows for the source of the voice. He spots the figure suspended high above in a web cocoon, her eyes wide with terror as she realizes she is not alone in this tomb. A dark, mocking grin spreads across his face as he stares up at the trapped girl, his tone dripping with a calculated, cold-hearted indifference. The girl cries out in a tearful panic, her voice trembling as she begs for salvation from the nightmare that has claimed her. Shen Qing keeps his expression cold and detached, feigning indifference as he brushes off the girl's desperate pleas for help with a sharp, dismissive jab. The girl, bound tightly within the suffocating cocoon, screams in sheer terror as she begs him to reconsider and save her from becoming the monster's next meal. He stands his ground, his armor glinting in the dim light as he taunts her with a mocking question, clearly enjoying the power dynamic of this twisted encounter. Tears stream down her face as she frantically promises him anything, swearing that he will become her favorite savior if he only cuts her down from the web. She looks at him with wide, tear-filled eyes, genuinely confused by his hostility and pointing out that they have never even met before this moment. Shen Qing draws his bow with a fluid, lethal motion, his eyes narrowing as he demands that she keep her word once he decides to intervene. A chilling, predatory presence looms in the darkness above, its multiple glowing red eyes fixating on the girl as she realizes the true horror is finally closing in. The demon spider queen descends from the shadows, a level 15 monstrosity that instantly shatters the expectations of the quest and forces the system to alert him. Shen Qing's heart skips a beat as he realizes his future knowledge is failing him, for this boss is a high-level variant he has absolutely no data on. He ignites his purple ocular aura, his resolve hardening as he decides to test his own limits against this unknown threat and prove his worth once and for all. The demon spider queen unleashes a torrent of razor-sharp webbing, the viscous strands slicing through the air with lethal intent as they hunt for their target. The trapped girl screams in a desperate, frantic panic, her voice echoing through the cavern as she berates the level 8 player for his reckless, suicidal arrogance. Shen Qing ignores the noise, his body coiled like a spring as he taps into the raw, kinetic potential of his Night King bloodline to defy the odds. A web strand slams into the solid stone wall with a deafening crack, the impact shattering the rock as the boss's attack narrowly misses its mark. The queen lashes out with a whip-like motion of her abdomen, her movements blurring as she attempts to ensnare the agile intruder in a suffocating embrace. Shen Qing narrowly avoids the crushing blow, his eyes widening as he realizes the sheer, overwhelming power of this high-level variant is unlike anything he anticipated. He leaps into the air, his red cape snapping violently as he mocks the creature's sluggishness, his confidence remaining unshaken despite the mounting danger. With a fluid, practiced motion, he draws his bow and looses a piercing arrow, the projectile glowing with ethereal energy as it streaks toward the monstrosity. The demon spider queen hisses, her multiple red eyes tracking the incoming bolt as she prepares to intercept the strike with her formidable chitinous claws. In a display of terrifying reflexes, the boss snatches the arrow out of the air, her grip crushing the shaft as she stares him down with predatory malice. Shen Qing stares in disbelief, his frustration boiling over as he realizes the sheer, unfair absurdity of the boss's defensive capabilities. The demon spider queen looms in the darkness, her presence commanding the very air as she prepares to unleash another wave of chaotic, web-based destruction. High above, the captive daughter screams a desperate warning, her voice cutting through the tension as she begs him to protect his hearing from the incoming blast. Shen Qing reacts instantly, clamping his hand over his ear to brace for the sonic assault, his tactical instincts firing on all cylinders. He leaps into the fray, his body twisting through the air as he attempts to maintain his offensive momentum despite the overwhelming pressure of the boss's aura. A sharp, stinging blow connects, his health bar plummeting as the boss's relentless assault forces him to fight through the pain of a direct hit. He lands heavily, his status screen flashing with the brutal reality of his situation, the paralysis and blindness debuffs stacking to cripple his combat efficiency. He grits his teeth, acknowledging the sheer, ridiculous power of this hidden boss while refusing to let his resolve crumble under the weight of the encounter. Suddenly, the girl's frantic voice rings out again, urging him to look down at the ground where a new, swarming nightmare is beginning to unfold. The floor erupts as hundreds of spider hatchlings burst from their purple cocoons, forcing Shen Qing to stand his ground against an encroaching tide of tiny, lethal threats. Shen Qing unleashes a flurry of kicks, his boots carving through the air to scatter the encroaching swarm of spider hatchlings that threaten to overwhelm his position. He grinds his teeth in frustration, his eyes darting across the cavern as the sheer, suffocating volume of the parasitic pests begins to push him toward a breaking point. A sudden chill runs down his spine as he realizes the hatchlings are crawling all over his armor, their tiny, skittering legs creating a frantic, maddening sensation. He swats at the pests clinging to his cape, his mind racing to formulate a desperate counterattack before he is completely buried under the weight of the swarm. With a surge of kinetic energy, he executes a powerful, sweeping maneuver that blasts the hatchlings away, creating a momentary pocket of breathing room in the chaos. The demon spider queen looms above, her mandibles dripping with a lethal glowing purple toxin as she prepares to launch another devastating, web-based projectile. Shen Qing dives through the air, his body a blur of motion as he narrowly evades the queen's strike, the energy blast shattering the stone floor behind him. A system notification chimes in his mind, signaling that the debilitating paralysis and blindness effects have finally faded, granting him the clarity needed to turn the tide. High above, the captive girl watches in despair, her tear-streaked face twisted in doubt as she openly questions if any hero is truly strong enough to save her. Shen Qing dodges a barrage of incoming attacks, his tactical mind reeling from the realization that the queen's reflexes are too sharp to hit her upper body directly. Shen Qing launches himself into the air, his body a blur of motion as he maneuvers through the cavern to bait the boss into a fatal mistake. He reaches out to grab the thick, sticky webbing, intentionally positioning himself to be ensnared by the very trap meant to hold his corpse. The demon spider queen lets out a piercing, guttural hiss, her mandibles vibrating with the terrifying, concentrated energy of her signature sonic attack. He grits his teeth, his eyes locked on the monstrosity as he calculates the exact moment to strike, knowing his window of opportunity is razor-thin. He hangs suspended in the web, his limbs bound as he willingly accepts the entrapment to ensure he is perfectly positioned for the coming blast. The captive girl watches in sheer disbelief, her voice trembling as she questions his sanity for choosing to face such a devastating skill head-on. The queen unleashes the demon spider sonic wave, a pulsating ring of destructive force that ripples through the air with enough power to shatter bone. The shockwave slams into him, the impact rattling his armor and draining a chunk of his health, yet he holds firm against the crushing pressure. He lands on his feet, his bow drawn and glowing with a fierce, ethereal light as he declares that the time for his counteroffensive has finally arrived. The girl stares at him in absolute shock, her jaw dropping as she realizes his massive HP pool has allowed him to tank the hit and remain standing. Shen Qing leaps through the air, his bow drawn and glowing with ethereal energy as he unleashes a rapid-fire barrage of arrows toward the towering demon spider queen. The boss displays terrifying reflexes, her chitinous claws snapping shut to catch the projectile mid-flight with a sharp, resounding crack that echoes through the cavern. The captive girl watches the display in horror, her voice rising in a frantic, desperate warning as she realizes the boss is far more dangerous than he anticipated. Shen Qing remains undeterred, his eyes locked on the target as he fires another high-velocity shot, the arrow streaking through the darkness like a bolt of blue lightning. The projectile connects with a thunderous impact, slamming into the queen's abdomen and forcing her to recoil as the system registers a massive chunk of health depleted. The captive girl's eyes widen in sudden realization, her mind piecing together his tactical genius as she understands the first shot was merely a calculated distraction. Shen Qing lands with a predatory smirk, his posture radiating absolute confidence as he prepares to exploit the opening he just carved into the monster's defenses. The girl's expression shifts from pure terror to a glimmer of hope, her voice trembling with the newfound belief that this mysterious player might actually secure her freedom. The demon spider queen lets out a guttural, enraged hiss, her multiple red eyes burning with malice as she lunges forward to crush the intruder beneath her weight. Shen Qing vaults into the air once more, his bow humming with power as he rains down a final, punishing volley that forces the boss to scramble in defense. The captive girl screams a desperate warning, her eyes wide with panic as she begs him to avoid the sticky, lethal webs that coat the cavern floor. Shen Qing ignores the frantic plea, his focus entirely on the demon spider queen as he weaves through the complex web of traps with calculated, high-speed precision. The girl grows increasingly agitated, her voice sharp with irritation as she berates him for his reckless disregard for her advice and his own safety. Shen Qing remains locked in his zone, his eyes glowing with that intense purple aura as he mutters that the end of this grueling fight is finally within reach. He drops into a low, tactical crouch, his body coiled and ready to strike while the sticky, shimmering threads of the spider web surround him on all sides. The girl watches in disbelief, her frustration boiling over as she realizes he has intentionally walked into the trap, seemingly throwing away his chance at survival. The demon spider queen towers over him, her multiple red eyes burning with a cold, predatory hunger as she prepares to finish the intruder once and for all. With a sudden, violent motion, the queen launches a concentrated, purple-hued web projectile that streaks through the air to pin him against the cavern wall. Shen Qing's face contorts into a savage, triumphant grin, his eyes flashing with the realization that he has successfully baited the boss into the perfect position. The web strands shatter against his armor, the impact echoing through the chamber as he prepares to unleash his final, devastating counterattack against the monstrosity. The rescued girl's eyes widen in absolute shock, her entire worldview shifting as she stares at the terrifying, multi-eyed visage of the demon spider queen. Shen Qing makes his move, leaping through the air with lethal grace as he descends toward the girl while the monstrous boss looms in the background. A sudden flash of insight hits the girl, her mind racing as she realizes his earlier, seemingly random shots were actually a calculated tactical maneuver to sever the web's anchor points. She cries out in a desperate, frantic plea for salvation, her voice echoing through the cavern as she watches him plummet toward her position. With a swift, practiced motion, he catches her in his arms, his armored frame shielding her from the surrounding chaos as he lands with a heavy, controlled impact. She looks up at him with a mixture of awe and disbelief, her mind struggling to process how someone could be this cunning in the face of such overwhelming odds. The demon spider queen lets out a deafening, guttural screech, her massive form crashing down into the web-covered floor as she recovers from the initial assault. Shen Qing sets the girl down on the cold stone, his movements efficient and utterly devoid of wasted energy as he prepares to re-engage the monstrosity. She winces in pain, her face twisting into a mask of indignation as she lashes out at him, demanding to know why he had to be so rough with her. He doesn't even spare her a glance, his gaze locked firmly on the boss as he coldly shuts down her complaints, reminding her that the battle is far from finished. The demon spider queen hovers in the air, her body wreathed in a swirling, violet aura of sonic energy that threatens to tear the very fabric of the cavern apart. Shen Qing stares up at the monstrosity, his analytical mind racing as he questions if the haunting melody echoing through the chamber is yet another lethal sonic attack. Beside him, the rescued girl clutches his arm in pure, unadulterated terror, her wide eyes reflecting the sheer scale of the nightmare they are trapped within. The queen descends further, her multiple red eyes burning with malice as a massive swarm of parasitic hatchlings boils up from the shadows to surround them. Shen Qing's expression hardens, his internal monologue shifting from tactical analysis to a grim acceptance that his current level is simply not enough to brute force this boss. He makes a split-second decision to abandon the fight, grabbing the girl's hand and sprinting toward the exit with every ounce of speed his gear allows. They dash through the web-choked tunnels, desperate to put distance between themselves and the queen, but a sudden, jarring impact brings their escape to a screeching halt. Shen Qing slams face first into an invisible, shimmering wall of force, the recoil sending him sprawling backward onto the cold, sticky floor of the cave. He clutches his throbbing head, his frustration peaking as the system interface manifests in the air to deliver the crushing news that he is locked in this death trap. He lets out a roar of pure, unfiltered rage, his teeth bared as he demands to know why the system failed to warn him about the mandatory nature of this hellish quest. The rescued girl lets out a mocking, high-pitched giggle, her eyes crinkling as she informs him that the exit is sealed, and his only path to survival is to slay the demon spider queen. Shen Qing's face contorts into a mask of pure, unadulterated disbelief, his voice rising in a sharp, incredulous retort as he points out that her laughter will be the death of them both. She waves a hand dismissively, her expression shifting to a calm, eerie serenity as she claims that if he falls, she will simply wait for the next hero to arrive and claim her reward. A sudden, electric jolt of realization strikes Shen Qing, his eyes widening as he recalls the legendary, game-breaking lute known as Gu Linger's chest. He stands tall, his red cape billowing as he lets out a sharp, confident scoff, declaring to the cavern that the hero she is waiting for is standing right in front of her. The ground beneath them begins to tremble as a massive, skittering swarm of spiders emerges from the shadows, their chittering sounds filling the air with a suffocating, rhythmic dread. The girl's voice trembles with genuine panic as she points toward the encroaching tide, her composure shattering as she realizes the swarm is closing in on their position. Shen Qing's gaze drops to the floor, his analytical mind locking onto the sticky, discarded webs he had sliced through earlier, a sudden, brilliant tactical spark igniting behind his eyes. He channels his energy into his weapon, the blue aura of his power crackling along the shaft of his spear as he prepares to execute a daring, improvised maneuver. The tip of his weapon becomes coated in the thick, adhesive silk, and just as he prepares to strike, the girl's desperate, shrill cry for salvation rings out through the dark. The rescued girl stands amidst the encroaching swarm, her health bar ticking down as the parasitic spiders begin to drain her life force. Shen Qing lunges forward, his movements a blur of efficiency as he clears the immediate threat with a swift, sweeping strike of his weapon. The demon spider queen descends from the ceiling like a nightmare made flesh, her massive, bladed limbs poised to skewer the pair in a single, brutal motion. Shen Qing scoops the girl up and leaps into the air, his boots kicking off the cavern wall to narrowly evade the queen's devastating, earth-shattering impact. He lands gracefully on a jagged rock formation, his eyes scanning the web-choked walls for any tactical advantage to turn this desperate skirmish around. The sheer insanity of the situation weighs on him, his mind racing as he realizes he is juggling a boss fight and a babysitting mission in a literal hell-level dungeon. The girl, seemingly oblivious to the mortal danger, clings to his back with a wide, manic grin, finding the entire life-or-death struggle absolutely exhilarating. Shen Qing ignores her excitement, his focus sharpening as he uses his spear to carve a path through the dense, sticky webbing that threatens to pin them in place. Suddenly, the queen unleashes a barrage of lethal, purple-hued projectiles, the air whistling as the energy bolts streak toward them with unerring, homing precision. He twists in midair, his armor glowing as he deflects the incoming assault with a series of precise, high-speed strikes that shatter the boss's projectiles into harmless sparks. Shen Qing vaults through the air with the girl secured on his back, his bow drawn and glowing with a searing, golden flame that cuts through the gloom. His face hardens into a mask of pure, predatory focus, his fangs bared as he commands the inferno to consume everything in its path. He looses the flaming projectile, the arrow streaking across the cavern like a comet to ignite the very air around the encroaching spider swarm. The ground erupts in a massive, blinding explosion of fire, the heat radiating outward to incinerate the parasitic hatchlings before they can even reach him. The cavern is transformed into a roaring furnace, the flames licking at the walls as the spider swarm is caught in a desperate, screeching struggle for survival. The demon spider queen stands amidst the inferno, her multiple red eyes wide with shock as she realizes her minions are being turned to ash in seconds. Shen Qing watches the carnage with a cold, satisfied smirk, his confidence surging as he realizes his tactical gamble has completely turned the tide of battle. The rescued girl stares at him with wide, adoring eyes, her voice filled with genuine awe as she cheers for his overwhelming display of power. The queen lets out a final, guttural shriek as the flames engulf her massive form, her defenses crumbling under the relentless intensity of the magical fire. With a final, decisive motion, Shen Qing fires a follow-up shot that pierces the queen's defenses, pinning her down as the fire continues to ravage her health bar. Shen Qing watches in shock as the demon spider queen attempts to retreat, her form ascending toward the cavern's ceiling on a single, glowing strand of silk. He refuses to let his prey escape, launching himself into the air with a desperate, high-speed dash that bridges the gap between them in a heartbeat. With a precise, calculated strike, he severs the silk anchor, sending the monstrosity plummeting back down into the inferno he ignited earlier. He lands with a heavy, aggressive stance, his eyes burning with the intensity of a predator who has finally cornered his target. The queen shrieks as she crashes into the flames, her chitinous armor beginning to crack under the relentless, searing heat of his magical assault. A system notification flashes in the air, displaying his health at a stable 1650 while the boss's life bar rapidly depletes toward the triple digits. He leaps into the heart of the fire, his body a blur of motion as he closes the distance to deliver a brutal finishing blow. He looms over the weakened boss, his expression twisted into a savage, mocking grin as he challenges the creature to a final, roasting confrontation. The queen attempts a desperate, last-ditch defense, but her movements are sluggish and uncoordinated as the fire consumes her remaining strength. Shen Qing delivers a crushing, decisive strike, his fist connecting with the boss's carapace in a thunderous impact that signals the end of the nightmare. Shen Qing's face contorts with raw, unbridled intensity as he prepares to deliver the final, crushing blow to the weakened boss. His armored gauntlet slams into the demon spider queen with a thunderous, bone-shattering impact that echoes through the cavern. The monstrosity reels backward, caught in the heart of the inferno as the flames consume her remaining defenses. He demands to know what the creature finds so amusing, his voice dripping with a mix of frustration and cold, predatory rage. He follows up with a brutal, point-blank strike, his weapon tearing through the queen's chitinous armor as she struggles to maintain her footing. The demon spider queen looks on in a dazed, disoriented stupor, her multiple eyes spinning as the sheer force of his assault leaves her completely stunned. He stands tall amidst the roaring fire, his bow crackling with ethereal energy as he prepares to execute the final, decisive maneuver. The weapon strikes home with a sickening crunch, pinning the boss against the cavern wall and sealing her inevitable fate. The rescued daughter watches in absolute disbelief, her mind struggling to comprehend how an archer could dominate such a high-level boss in brutal, close-quarters combat. Shen Qing stands engulfed in the searing heat, his health bar ticking down as he ignores the burning status to ensure the monster is truly finished. The demon spider queen's health bar drops to a critical 223, her monstrous form silhouetted against the raging, all-consuming inferno. A concentrated blast of energy erupts from her core, the searing light tearing through the smoke as she makes a desperate, final attempt to survive. Shen Qing finds himself suddenly ensnared by a thick, glowing web, the sticky strands binding his movements as the boss's trap snaps shut around him. He struggles against the suffocating restraints, his face twisted in a grimace of pure, unadulterated frustration as the bindings tighten with every passing second. The heat intensifies, the flames licking at his armor as he lets out a guttural, primal roar, his spirit refusing to break despite the overwhelming pressure. He remains suspended in the heart of the fire, a trapped predator waiting for the perfect opening to turn the tables on his monstrous adversary. The demon spider queen looms above, her multiple red eyes glowing with a cold, predatory malice as she prepares to deliver the killing blow. The rescued girl watches from the shadows, her expression one of dazed disbelief as she realizes the sheer, impossible scale of the battle unfolding before her. Shen Qing's armored hand reaches out, his fingers clawing at the air as he channels every ounce of his remaining strength into a singular, lethal strike. He lunges forward with his weapon, the steel biting deep into the queen's chitinous hide as he finally forces the monstrosity into a corner. Shen Qing stands amidst the roaring inferno, his armor glowing as he realizes the fire has finally burned away the suffocating webs that held him captive. The rescued daughter watches from the periphery, her eyes wide with relief as she realizes the nightmare is finally coming to an end. The demon spider queen lets out a final, agonizing shriek as the flames consume her, her massive form thrashing in a desperate, futile struggle. Shen Qing draws his bow with lethal intent, his eyes locked onto the dying monstrosity as he prepares to deliver the absolute final blow. He looses a piercing arrow that strikes true, the impact shattering the last of the queen's defenses as her health bar finally hits zero. The system chimes with a triumphant notification, confirming the boss has been slain and granting him the experience needed to reach level 12. He leaps away from the dying embers, his red cape snapping in the heat as he clears the distance to reach the safety of the cavern wall. The girl approaches him with a look of pure gratitude, her voice trembling as she checks on the savior who risked everything to secure her rescue. The burning status finally fades from his interface, leaving him battered but alive with his health stabilizing at a precarious 144. He closes his eyes for a brief, exhausted second, letting out a long, shaky breath as he acknowledges just how close he came to total defeat. The rescued girl stares up at her savior in complete disbelief, her eyes wide as she struggles to process the fact that he actually survived the impossible. Shen Qing brushes the top of her head with a casual, heroic flair, his ego inflating as he basks in the glory of his hard-won victory. A massive pile of glittering loot spills out from the defeated boss's remains, the golden light illuminating the dark, cavernous floor with the promise of untold riches. He eyes the shimmering treasure with a greedy, predatory grin, already calculating how much this haul will accelerate his rise to the top of the game. With a flick of his wrist, he activates his storage ability, the blue data stream energy swirling around his gauntlet to hoover up every single item in sight. The system interface erupts with a flurry of notifications as the loot is gathered, the blue energy binding the treasure into his inventory with a satisfying chime. He revels in the massive influx of wealth, his mind flashing back to the grueling, month-long grind of his past life that now feels like a distant, pathetic memory. The girl tilts her head in genuine confusion, her voice cutting through his internal monologue as she questions his bizarre, cryptic mention of a past life. Shen Qing freezes for a split second before breaking into a nervous, forced laugh, frantically waving his hand to dismiss his slip-up as a simple gaming reference. He pulls up the detailed stats of his newly evolved armor-piercing bow, the purple-hued weapon glowing with lethal potential as he prepares to dominate the next stage of his journey. Shen Qing inspects his new gear with a sharp, satisfied grin, knowing this high-tier bow is exactly the tool he needs to shred through heavily armored foes. He activates the equipment, the Shadow Ranger's signature blue aura swirling around him as the armor-piercing bow manifests in his grip with a lethal humming resonance. A system notification highlights the stats of his upgraded steel gauntlets, confirming that his tactical evolution has successfully pushed them into the coveted silver tier. He shifts his attention to the golden greatsword, a powerful weapon that, while impressive, doesn't quite fit his current build, forcing him to weigh his options. He strokes his chin in deep contemplation, deciding that while he cannot wield the blade himself, it remains a valuable asset for future trades or strategic gifts. The Amulet of Life pulses with a vibrant green light, its passive regeneration stats promising to eliminate his reliance on health potions during long, grueling dungeon crawls. He reviews his updated character sheet, watching his stats climb as the gear integration solidifies his position as a force to be reckoned with at level 12. A system chime echoes through the cavern, signaling the successful completion of the hidden quest to rescue the daughter of Madame Gu. The legendary chest manifests in a brilliant, blinding explosion of purple light, its ornate design hinting at the game-breaking rewards hidden within. Gulinger stands before him with a haughty, dismissive wave, leaving the fate of the chest's contents entirely up to the whims of his own legendary luck. Shen Qing grins with pure, unadulterated hype as he prepares to crack open the legendary chest and claim his hard-earned reward. A blinding pillar of ethereal light erupts from the container, bathing the cavern in a radiant glow that signals the birth of a powerful new ability. The system interface manifests in the air, revealing the details of the epic tier skill Phantom, a game-changing tool that promises to redefine his combat potential. Shen Qing's eyes widen in absolute disbelief as he processes the sheer utility of the skill, his mind racing to calculate the tactical advantages it offers. The skill description burns into his vision, highlighting the ability to summon a synchronous duplicate that inherits his attack effects and vision for 30 seconds. A predatory smirk spreads across his face as he realizes the implications, understanding that his total damage output is about to be effectively doubled in the heat of battle. He absorbs the skill into his arsenal, the blue data stream energy swirling around his form as he revels in the massive potential for his late-game dominance. Gulinger interrupts his moment of triumph with a blunt, sobering remark, reminding him that his luck was merely average despite the quality of the loot. She proceeds to lecture him on the hierarchy of equipment tiers, pointing out that her chests exclusively drop high-end gear from gold to legendary quality. Shen Qing stands enveloped in a surging blue aura, the system confirming the successful acquisition of the Phantom skill as he prepares to dominate the next challenge. Shen Qing radiates pure, unshakable confidence as he declares that the true potential of any skill lies not in its rarity, but in the hands of the player wielding it. Gulinger rolls her eyes at his display of ego, firing back with a sharp, dismissive jab that labels him a total narcissist. He remains unfazed by her critique, his mind already racing with the tactical implications of his evolution skill and the path to legendary gear. He envisions the ultimate pinnacle of power, the elusive demon god tier that stands far above the standard equipment found in this world. A flicker of deep, calculated ambition crosses his face as he wonders if this god-tier gear is the secret to manifesting his digital strength in the real world. A sudden system notification interrupts his thoughts, alerting him that the green-scale armor and the 7-star piercing arrow skill are finally ready for deployment. He stares at the glowing interface, his resolve hardening as he issues the command to equip his newly acquired assets. A surge of raw, blue energy erupts around his body, the power of the gear flowing into him and elevating his presence to a whole new level. He checks his updated combat stats with a satisfied smirk, realizing he is now strong enough to hunt bosses well above the level 20 threshold. With his sights set on the desolate, moonlit ruins of the Sand Village, he prepares to venture into the next stage of his relentless climb to the top. Madame Gu embraces her daughter in a tearful reunion, her gratitude pouring out as Shen Qing stands silently in the background, his mission complete. The system interface pulses with a golden glow, confirming that the affection rating with Madame Gu has surged by 30 points, bringing his total to 50. Shen Qing keeps his eyes on the prize, calculating the path to 100% affection while mentally mapping out the next high-reward quest in the village. He raises a hand in a casual farewell, his mind already drifting toward the next objective as the NPCs bid him a fond, lingering goodbye. A sudden, jarring series of notifications tears him away from the virtual world, the persistent cries of his sister echoing through his consciousness. He is ripped from the immersive depths of the game, his senses returning to the sterile, quiet reality of his hospital room as he pulls off the headset.